Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. You are watching the Paris Fintech Forum Communities video interview series. I'm Elliott Gotkine, and today I'm joined by the co-founder and CEO of Khazna, Omar Saleh. Welcome.
Thank you, Elliott. It's a great pleasure to be with you here today.
Okay, so before we get cracking, Omar, let's learn a little bit more about Khazna. Omar, may not be familiar to everyone outside of Egypt in particular, so tell us more about Khazna.
Sure. So Khazna is Egypt's leading credit-led neobank. Khazna runs a profitable B2B2C credit-backed fintech that basically offers the first access to formal financial services to 82% of our users today. So Khazna is particularly focused on mid and low-income consumers, which is the bulk of Egypt's population, who cannot really be served using the traditional banking and financial services channels. We offer our users the first formal access to credit, which then allows them to gradually grow and offer them more than multiple financial services through our app.
And so the way you make money is not particularly new. You're making money on interest, presumably on the credit that you give your customers.
Absolutely. We offer a transparent credit pricing model that offers our users, we charge our users monthly fees, and we offer a multi-purpose credit line that our users could use to request cash, buy products on installments, pay their bills, buy medical insurance from them and their family members. And we're the first fintech in Egypt to launch a prepaid card that's linked to the mobile app in a typical neobanking fashion. First 6 months, we issued over 150,000 cards, half of which are used for payroll to replace cash.
And presumably this all needs to be Sharia compliant as well.
Yeah, so actually our Sharia compliance with Egyptian scholars has been basically, we've been in line with that by not charging any late payment fees. So the feedback we got from scholars here in Egypt is that this is the core of what we need to do in order not to be compliant with Sharia, which we do. I think it's basically the perception and the scholars' view of Sharia really differs from one country to another. So in Saudi Arabia, we're in the process of launching our first operation outside of Egypt. It's pretty different, where we are launching with a Sharia advisory board and a Sharia annual audit to be compliant with Sharia requirements of the scholars, and also the regulator over there that requires full compliance with Sharia.
And I mean, for now, you say you're about to open in Saudi Arabia, but you're in Egypt, just Egypt right now. And although the World Bank's doing business rankings have been discontinued, I think the last ones in 2019 had Egypt around 114th. Tell us about some of the challenges Khazna's faced, which presumably would be alien to many of the fintech founders that we have here who perhaps operate in Europe or the United States or Asia.
Sure. Yeah, sure. So I think it's quite a different problem that we're solving. If you look at Egypt, over 90% of transactions to date are still in cash. And if you look at our consumers, most of their payments that they make, ultimately they make in cash. So whether it's rent, school fees, consumption, medical charges, transportation, they all pay it in cash. Because historically acceptance of digital means has been low, and things have been progressing significantly in Egypt on the acceptance side over the last few years. So I think what's very interesting, the problem that we're solving is, again, that most of our users, this is their first ever access to formal financial services through the Khazna app and card. So I think a big challenge that we have been working on is basically educating the users. So although if you look at Egyptian consumers, you'll find that their usage of different types of mobile applications such as chat, social media, and e-commerce are up there, like compared to developed markets. But use of banking and financial services is less than 50% that of developed markets. So a big part of our job is to basically educate the users on the use of banking financial services through our app, And yeah, so that's been, I think, one of the big challenges.
And is it a case of if you can make it in Egypt, you can pretty much make it anywhere in the Middle East?
Yeah, I think every country is different. I think we've been very lucky. And the reason why we started back in late 2019, early 2020, is because we've been very lucky and blessed with a forward-looking and progressive regulator in the Central Bank of Egypt. I think we tend to underestimate how important the role of regulators are in developing the industry. And we've been very lucky about our regulator, who's had like a great approach and a great support for the fintechs, and has always believed in that innovation precedes regulation. So both us and most of fintechs in Egypt receive significant support of the Central Bank of Egypt. And I think we couldn't have been where we are today in terms of the licensing, in terms of the support of the central bank and the banks and the funding, would it have not been for the central bank. I think other regulators in the region are following aggressively. You find that SAMA in Saudi Arabia has been on a tremendous progressive track over the last 3 years. And this is primarily the reason why we're attracted to launch in the Saudi market. Saudi is the world's second largest remittance sending market. It's one of the world's most advanced payment infrastructures. So the problem is a bit different in Egypt in that payments are pretty advanced, but still there's a tremendous, underbanked population for mid and low income consumers over there that we're also tackling.
Okay, so we've heard about Khazna. Let's now get to know Omar a little bit better. So, Omar, we can see that you seem like a young and athletic chap, but not many people may know that you were once Egypt's kickboxing champion. Tell us about that.
Sure. I think, those were the old good days. That was a while back, I would say 20 years ago. I think sports has played a fundamental role in my upbringing. I was born and raised here in Egypt. I was very privileged to get private education, Egypt's German school, which is one of the top schools, I think, in the entire region. And I studied engineering, but also did a lot of sports. And I think that sports plays a big role in building the stamina that is required to run an early stage venture. I was also very lucky to get a scholarship as a young professional to go and do my MBA at Stanford University, which was quite a pivotal moment in my entire career. Got back to Egypt, got engaged in a few entrepreneurial endeavors, and then ended up in fintech. I had a big passion for, impacting the lives of people, especially the underserved, and found that fintech would be probably one of the great channels to do that. Joined one of the big global fintechs on the remittances side and helped them launch the Middle East. And then in 2018 and 19 was super impressed about all the progression and the innovation that the Central Bank of Egypt was doing, and decided to get together with co-founders and start Khazna late 2019.
And so I have to ask, why did you give up the kickboxing? Was it because I know you have a young family, maybe your wife not too happy at seeing you getting beaten up, or perhaps turning up to board meetings with a black eye wasn't the best look?
Yeah, I think that had the role for sure. I think it left me with a few beauty scars, but definitely, I think it's one of those sports that is not sustainable, unfortunately. So I had to give it up early on in my career because of like how unprofessional black eyes look, in meetings. So I was actually asked to leave it by my former boss. Still today, I think it put me on a road of really physical consciousness, and I still work out very regularly. So definitely get a great kick out of that. And again, it's all about stamina and this line of business. So that helps me a lot to continue on this long journey.
Okay, so I guess we should start calling you the Jean-Claude Van Damme of fintech and going forward. But look, we've heard about Omar now, but of course a key part of this interview is to get your take on the future of finance. But first, we are going to take a very quick break, after which we're going to continue our conversation with Khazna co-founder and CEO, Omar Saleh. Welcome back, and don't forget, if you're not already a full member of our community, everything you need to join can be found at www.parisfintechforum.com. And now, Omar, let's talk about the future of finance. So, Omar, challenges for fintechs abound right now. Everything from difficulties fundraising to rising interest rates and inflation to bank runs in the United States. Paint me a picture of where you see fintech and finance once the dust has settled, or perhaps it's not even affecting you right now because you're in a completely separate region with its own challenges.
Of course. I can speak about my part of the world and my region. I'll tell you a little bit about Egypt. So Egypt, think a population of over 110 million Egyptians, 60 million adults that have access to a smartphone and usually some form of digital payment, usually a card, like a prepaid card. But the relationship really ends at the end of the month at the ATM. The banks, like only 5 million Egyptians have access to like credit cards, personal loans, auto loans, savings, etc. through banks, because this is the segment that basically the traditional financial institutions can serve profitably. Which leaves us with a significant, over 50 million Egyptians who don't have access to such services because of their low level of income and the high cost of serving them using traditional channels. So again, if you look at, definitely the macro has been challenging globally, but also in Egypt that has suffered from some challenges on the currency side over the last year. But if you look at the performance of fintechs such as ourselves and others here in Egypt, they've been able to grow, very, very rapidly just due to the size of the micro opportunity. So it's one of those markets where micro beats the hell out of macro, right? Like it's just like the huge and humongous size of the micro opportunity really offsets any macro headwinds that we see.
And given what's going on more broadly around the world, do you see, is it possible that the region, people who are struggling or, where the economies are slower growing, for example, might see emerging markets, Egypt, Saudi, MENA region as a potential growth opportunity to either establish themselves or to partner or to perhaps even acquire yourselves or other fintechs in the region?
Sure. I think this is definitely a very interesting time for partnering up, for M&A. We've looked at multiple opportunities. It's definitely a very interesting time in point. I think what really differentiates Khazna is our B2B2C model, which allows us to offer credit, and by having first access to users' income, be it salaries, pensions, or remittances, allows us to operate at a very low delinquency rate and offer credit at very attractive rates that are comparable to traditional financial institutions. So although the macro has been tough, and our users have been significantly affected by increasing inflation, higher interest rates, and accompanied but not by wages that haven't increased as much, so they've been squeezed. We are still able to offer them with these first access to the credit line, first access to the formal financial services, while running a profitable portfolio and pricing effectively. I think the region, it's unfair to look at the entire region from one lens. You'll find that, for example, Saudi, where we are launching very soon, is one of those. It's a very different environment, right? You have very strong, fundamental macroeconomics, and you have a very live and healthy stock market, right? So I think, and capital markets in general. So I think it's very important for, international players and global players to view every market very separately. I think what's very common around our part of the world is that there's a high level of underserved segments, primarily on low and mid-income consumers, but also SMEs, that will only be served using technology, right? So it's a great opportunity and an invitation by everyone here, including the regulators, for technology-driven fintechs to come and be part of the solution.
But of course, whether it's in Egypt or in other parts of the region, there are challenges which you can't necessarily control. Things like infrastructure or obviously interest rates, inflation, other macroeconomic policies. But if the telecoms network goes down or there are blackouts, for example, then that obviously impacts your consumers' ability to kind of use your services. So I'm just wondering, when you do have these challenges, which would be completely alien to someone operating out of the United States or Europe, how do you overcome them? And does that, in a weird way, kind of make you, even stronger and a better prospect than perhaps some of these other fintechs?
I think we underestimate people's ability to adapt and to be resilient. I think it's like we've been very impressed to see how our consumers throughout COVID, the challenges of COVID, and then now with the financial difficulties, how they've been able to innovatively find other sources of income, cut their costs, and basically be able to meet their family's demands. So I think we've been as well as we've been blessed with a very strong infrastructure, developing infrastructure here in Egypt, whether it's on the telco or on the banking financial services side. Central Bank of Egypt has developed its own payment rails as well, in addition to the established ones. So I think we've been very blessed as to where we are compared to the rest of the world. But definitely it's still early days, and there's big opportunities for further investments for sure.
And I suppose it's impossible to completely ignore politics, even though obviously you want to focus on the job at hand. But in recent years in the region, we've seen a number of normalization agreements between Israel and other countries. Obviously the peace agreement with Egypt predates those by some wide margin. But do you think that, given, let's say, these agreements, that do you see a future or greater potential for the region as a whole to fulfill its potential when it comes to finance, fintechs, and startups?
We really hope so. We really hope so. I'm not a political expert, of course, so I cannot really comment on that. But I can tell you, from a people, people get well together, right? So we really hope that this the phase of stability continues. We see a lot of the Arab world, the Middle East. We see a lot of countries coming together. I think we lived through a very difficult last decade, but I think the last 5 or 6 years here in Egypt have been extremely stable. We are very lucky to be where we are today. I think there are very strong relationships with our neighboring countries. I think we definitely benefited a lot from some of the challenges that we had. We now understand what the right way forward is, and we really hope for the best for the entire region.
Okay, I'll try to not ask you any more politically related questions. But of course, a lot of buzz this year in the startup space, including in fintech, has been artificial intelligence and AI. What do you feel? Is it already being adopted by technology companies in Egypt and in the region, and what promise do you think it holds out? Where is it going to take us?
Absolutely. I think this is a huge development, and we have at Khazna, we've already started applying that. We run our own customer support, team, both chat and calls. So we've been able to work with our providers to already improve the experience significantly by adding AI throughout the customer experience. And I think ultimately what the power of this technology allows us to do is basically micro customization of the user experience. Ultimately, what matters most to us is to meet the customer interests and demand. Customer obsession is one of our core 4 values, and the core value really. So I think our ability to use the power of AI to basically customize the user experience would definitely put us in a very unique position. So we are working closely with the experience, obviously, providers and the global leaders in that area with an aim to ultimately, again, tailor the experience on a micro level for our consumers.
Okay. All right. So look, it's time now for our round of rapid fire questions, Omar. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay, great. So I've got 90 seconds on my clock. I'm going to start my timer. When the buzzer goes, then I'll let you finish your answer to that one, and then we'll end. Okay, so here we go. What fintech segment has the biggest potential over the next 5 years?
Credit-led consumer in
What is
emerging markets.
What is the biggest pain point in your everyday financial life that you would like to see resolved?
The overuse of cash in our markets.
Do you think we are at the beginning, middle, or end of the fintech wave?
Just scratching the surface.
Do you have a metaverse strategy?
We're too busy for it to do that.
Do you think that regulators in the EU, US, and I guess the MENA region have adapted enough to handle the new possibilities and behaviors we're seeing in the financial industry?
We've been extremely lucky about our regulators here. I can speak about Egypt and maybe Saudi. Extremely.
Okay, just one word answers, Omar. How would you describe NFTs, non-fungible tokens? A scam, B, an interesting concept, or C, part of the future that we really don't want to miss out on?
Part of the future.
Have you ever personally invested in crypto?
I haven't.
Are physical points of sales part of the future of finance?
100%.
On a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is the most likely, 1 the least likely, how likely in the next 10 years do you think it will be that one of the neobanks will be as profitable as a top-tier legacy bank?
10.
Okay, and there goes the buzzer as well, so I'm afraid no more time for rapid-fire questions and no more time for our conversation because we are out of time. So I really just want to thank you, Khazna co-founder and CEO Omar Saleh, for joining me today. Thank you so much.
Great pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Okay, and for everyone watching, we will be back again next time with another big name from the world of finance and technology. We do hope you'll be able to join us again then. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe to the Paris Fintech Forum YouTube channel and to follow us on Twitter at Paris Fin Forum. That's all for now. See you next time. Bye-bye.